I was born calm. When my younger siblings fought over milk, I'd sit off to the side like it didn't concern me. If I got it, fine. If I didn't, also fine. When we grew up, that same pattern followed me into adulthood. My younger sister, Bella, snatched the better marriage proposal first, leaving me the bad option, Adrian Sterling, the heir everyone said had gone bankrupt. I nodded. Okay. Marriage is marriage. As long as he's a decent human being, I'm good. Nobody expected what happened next. Adrian rebuilt everything. Quietly, steadily, and then all at once. He staged a comeback so massive people started calling him the richest man in the city. The name Sterling went from pity to envy overnight. And that's when Bella came to see me, with a smile that was too bright and eyes that were too hungry, hoping we could swap husbands, so she could become Mrs. Sterling instead. I was just about to nod, because nodding was what I always did, when Adrian stepped forward and covered my mouth with his hand, gentle but firm. That's not happening, he said. Me? I tried to argue through his fingers. It could happen, Adrian. It really, really can't. From the moment I could remember, I never fought for anything. When we were kids, if my brother and sister argued over the last bottle of juice, I'd just watch. It wasn't that I didn't want it. I simply felt that getting it was fine, and not getting it was fine too. It was just juice. Once it was gone, it was gone. Mom used to say I had no temper. Dad called my go-with-the-flow attitude heartbreaking. But they quickly realized my personality was also convenient. Since I never fought for anything, they could give the best to my siblings without feeling guilty for long. Gradually, heartbreaking became routine. The best bedroom went to Bella, because girls need to be pampered. The expensive private tutors went to my brother, because boys need to succeed. And me, Jane, got the smallest north-facing room and went to public school. Jane is the most sensible, Mom would say, like it was a compliment. She won't mind. And I didn't. Not the way they expected me to. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't plead. I just didn't attach my heart to it. At 23, I graduated and found a clerical job at a normal company for an average salary. My days were quiet, smooth, almost ripple-free. Bella, 2 years younger, had just returned from studying abroad and was waiting to be married off like she was the main event. One night, our parents called us into the living room. 2 portfolios lay on the coffee table. Dad cleared his throat. You're both at the age to marry. These 2 young men are suitable candidates. I picked up one file. Adrian Sterling, 28. Heir to Sterling Group. The man in the photo had sharp brows, bright eyes, and an unmistakable presence, like the kind of person who looked expensive even on paper. The notes underneath said Sterling Group had recently suffered from mismanagement and filed for bankruptcy restructuring. The other file belonged to Liam Cole, the only son of a wealthy family with assets in the billions. Bella picks first, Mom said, looking at my sister as if it were the most natural rule in the world. Bella didn't even glance at Adrian's file. She grabbed Liam's immediately. I want the Cole family, she announced. Then she turned to me, eyes gleaming with triumphant entitlement. Jane, you marry Adrian. You're not picky anyway. I looked at Adrian's photo again. He really was handsome. And I nodded. Okay. Mom visibly relaxed. Jane is so sensible. Although Adrian is down on his luck, he's still a Sterling, Dad said, as if he were being generous. He's more than good enough for you. It's settled, then, Mom concluded. I closed the file without a word. Marriage is marriage. It's just living life, in a different house, with a different person. From that day on, the house filled with wedding talk. Bella's wedding was set for 3 months later, 50 tables at the city's finest 5-star hotel. Mom spent every day spinning like a top, choosing dresses, jewelry, decor, the perfect flowers, the perfect lighting, the perfect everything. My wedding was scheduled for a week after Bella's. 10 tables at a regular restaurant. Mom explained it like she was being practical. The Sterling family doesn't have many people left. Let's keep it simple. I nodded. Okay. Then came the dowry. For Bella, it was truckloads of goods, Designer bags, jewelry, antique vases, polished furniture, brand new appliances, plus a check for $500,000 that Mom prepared like it was the final bow on a masterpiece. "If the dowry is light, the Cole family will look down on us," she said while directing the movers. "We can't lose face." For me, Mom packed 2 suitcases, one for clothes, one for daily necessities, and a modest set of silver jewelry. I looked at the 2 thin suitcases and said nothing. Maybe Mom felt the faintest pinch of guilt, because she added quickly, "Jane, you're marrying a man who's bankrupt. Adrian has nothing right now. It's his blessing to marry you at all. He won't dare complain about a small dowry." "He should be grateful," Dad agreed. "Your sister is different," Mom continued. "The Coles are old money. We can't let them underestimate us. You understand, right?" "I understand," I said. Because I did. Bella got the best because she needed to marry well. It didn't matter for me because I didn't care. And since caring didn't change anything, I'd stopped trying. That logic had run smoothly in our family for over 20 years, like a machine that never jammed. The night before the wedding, Bella came into my room and leaned against the doorframe while I packed. "Jane," she said, voice sweet with something sharp underneath, "don't you feel shortchanged?" "Shortchanged?" I repeated, folding clothes without looking up. "How?" "Marrying a bankrupt guy," she said with a smirk. I couldn't handle it. "You don't have to," I said calmly. "You're marrying Liam." "True." She nodded, satisfied. "But don't be too sad. I heard Adrian is decent. At least he won't treat you badly. Besides, with your personality, it doesn't matter who you marry." I looked up at her. "You're right." She blinked, surprised by how easily it landed. Then, finding my calm boring, she shrugged and left. I kept packing, thinking, I'm getting married tomorrow. I'm marrying a man I've never met. I'm starting a completely unfamiliar life. That actually sounded interesting. It drizzled on my wedding day. Bella's wedding the week before had been bright, loud, crowded, full of important faces, sparkling cameras, and the kind of happiness people perform when they know they're being watched. She wore a gown that looked like it cost more than my car. She carried the family jade heirloom on her wrist as if it were her birthright. She held Liam's arm, smiling like she'd won something. My wedding was quiet. A few distant relatives from Adrian's side showed up. My side of the family claimed they weren't feeling well. Only a handful of colleagues came to support me. I wore the simple white dress Mom prepared. No veil. The makeup artist had been recommended by the restaurant owner, average skills, a light look. I studied myself in the mirror and thought, I look pretty good. The ceremony was simple. No elaborate speeches. No dramatic entrance. Just a small room, a cake, a few friends and relatives, and 2 people signing their names into a new life. Adrian and I exchanged rings, plain silver bands, probably not expensive, but clean and polished. I saw Adrian in person for the first time. He was taller than in the photo, and thinner, like life had trimmed him down. His suit looked worn, washed until the color had softened, but his tie was carefully straightened and his hair neatly styled, like dignity was something he refused to let go of. There was awkwardness in his eyes, but also effort. He was trying. When we slid the rings onto each other's fingers, he leaned in slightly and whispered, "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For making you marry someone like me." I looked at him properly then. He had beautiful eyes. Even in hard times, his natural grace wasn't something poverty could erase. "It's okay," I said. "I don't really mind." He paused, then let out a soft breath that almost sounded like a laugh, except it carried a bitterness he didn't want to show. After the ceremony, we cut the cake, toasted with our small crowd, and accepted the few red envelopes. Then Adrian said, quietly, "Let's go home." Home. The word felt unfamiliar on my tongue, like a coat that didn't fit yet. Our home was an old apartment on the outskirts of the city, 6th floor, no elevator. Adrian carried my 2 thin suitcases up, step by step. I followed behind him, listening to his heavy footsteps. Every few flights he looked back at me, guilt in his eyes, as if he expected me to complain. "I'm sorry," he said again when we reached the door. "For making you live in a place like this." I looked around the hallway, the quiet stairwell, the worn paint. It's fine, I said honestly. At least it's quiet. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath, then unlocked the door. The apartment was small, about 600 square feet, one bedroom, but it was clean. Simple furniture. Clean curtains. Fresh sheets drying on the balcony. I cleaned yesterday, he said, a little shy. I hope you can get used to it. I stepped inside and felt something unexpected. It was modest, but it wasn't cold. I will, I said. He set the suitcases down, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a stack of bills, crumpled at the edges, carefully smoothed flat, and placed them in my hand. This is everything I have right now, he said. 3,000. I'm starting work as a delivery driver tomorrow. I'll make money. I'll support you. The bills were warm from his pocket. Old, but clean. Like he'd treated them with respect. I looked at the money, then back at him, and pushed it into his hand. You keep it, I said. What if you need cash while you're out working? He stared at me, something fragile and cautious in his expression. You don't despise me? He asked softly. No, I said. As long as we can survive, that's enough. Something shifted in his eyes, relief mixed with a kind of disbelief, as if he didn't know whether to trust kindness when he saw it. You. He stopped, then let out a quiet sigh. You really are. He didn't finish, but I knew what he meant. Easy. Convenient. Too calm. Too accepting. That night we had a simple dinner. He cooked noodles with 2 eggs and set the bowl in front of me like he was offering something precious. I'm not a good cook, he said. Just make do. It's tasty, I told him, and I meant it. The plain noodles tasted like the beginning of something steady. Afterward, he insisted on washing the dishes. I sat on the sofa and watched his back as he moved around the small kitchen, focused and careful. And I thought, with a quiet surprise, this life isn't bad. When it was time for bed, Adrian hesitated in the doorway like he didn't know where to place himself in this new world. I can sleep on the sofa, he offered quickly, too gentlemanly, too careful. So you can be comfortable. I blinked. The bed is big enough. We can both sleep. To me, sleeping together meant exactly what it sounded like, closing our eyes and going to sleep. But Adrian stiffened, then looked away, cheeks tense, as if he didn't want to take advantage of my literal calmness. He hesitated for a long moment, then shook his head gently. Let's wait until you're used to all this, he said. I didn't argue. I simply nodded. Lying in bed later, I could see his silhouette curled up on the sofa through the half-open door, too tall for it, trying to make himself smaller, like he believed he didn't deserve space. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I couldn't name. Not anger. Not sadness. Just a quiet awareness. This man might be better than I imagined. And he proved it in the most ordinary ways. He really did go out delivering food. Every morning he left before the sun felt fully awake, and every night he came back looking like the day had wrung him out, wind-burned cheeks, tired eyes, shoulders carrying the weight of too many stairs and too many have-a-nice nights. But he always brought something home. The first day, it was a tiny slice of cake in a plastic clamshell, the frosting slightly melted from being carried around in his bag. I passed a bakery, he said, almost embarrassed. I remembered you said you like sweet things. I did like sweet things. I ate it slowly, like it was a celebration. The second day, he brought a warm milk tea. The third day, a pack of cookies. The fourth, a little fruit cup with a fork taped to the lid. None of it was expensive. It was the remembering that made it feel expensive. How do you know what I like? I asked one night, watching him loosen his tie like it was a habit he refused to let go of, even in this life. He shrugged. I guessed. You look like someone who likes sweet things. He guessed right. And the longer it went on, the more I felt something awkward sitting in my chest, something like warmth and guilt, tangled together. He was a sterling heir. Even bankrupt, even knocked down, he had a kind of quiet pride. The fact that he was out there working like this, coming home exhausted, still thinking of me. It made me feel like I couldn't just sit still and accept everything like I always did. So even though my marriage leave wasn't over, I went back to work. On my first day back, I was handed a termination letter. Just like that. No warning. No meeting. No explanation that made sense. I stood there with the paper in my hands, blinking at the neat corporate font, trying to figure out what crime I'd committed by typing spreadsheets and answering emails. The HR manager wouldn't meet my eyes. "Jane," she said, voice strange, "just think about it. Did you offend someone recently?" I went home and replayed every conversation in my head. Every email. Every polite smile. Every time I'd said okay and meant it. Nothing. When Adrian came home that night, he didn't ask what I did wrong. He didn't look disappointed. He didn't sigh like my father used to when I didn't meet some invisible expectation. He just held out another small piece of cake, this one even smaller than the first, and pushed it gently toward me like it was medicine. "Eat," he said. "Nothing matters more than eating." I stared at him, and something inside me did something unfamiliar. It softened. I took a bite. The frosting was too sweet. I swallowed anyway. And then I thought, I can't be a parasite in this house. Not when the person feeding me is already breaking his back. So I decided to cook. Which was hilarious. Because despite being the least favored child, I'd never been the do chores and suffer child either. My parents believed in looking respectable. We had a housekeeper. I'd grown up being told I was sensible, not useful. I didn't even know how to properly stir-fry greens. But how hard could it be? Famous last thought. I poured oil into a pan like I'd seen online. Turned the heat up like confidence was a seasoning. Tossed in vegetables. And suddenly, too fast for my brain to catch up, there was a flare of fire, a hungry orange lick rising up from the pan like the stove had decided to punish my optimism. I panicked. I did the worst possible thing and reached for water. The flame jumped. Smoke bloomed. My eyes watered instantly. My throat seized. I stood there coughing, blinking through tears, thinking, wow. I really am talented at being calm in the face of disaster. Then I heard the front door. "Jane." Adrian's voice cut through the smoke like a rope. He rushed in, shut the heat off in one sharp movement, grabbed a damp towel, and smothered the pan with the kind of instinct that comes from having to survive. The fire died with a hiss. The kitchen looked like a crime scene. Adrian turned to me, scanning me from head to toe. His hands were steady but his eyes weren't. "Are you okay?" he demanded, already reaching for my hands. "Did you burn yourself?" "No," I croaked, coughing. "I just wanted to make you dinner." For a second he looked at the wreckage. Then at me, standing there with teary eyes and soot-smudged cheeks like a child caught breaking something priceless. And he let out a sound that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sigh. "You," he said, then stopped like he didn't know whether to scold me or hug me. He settled for checking my hands again, gently, like he couldn't believe I was unhurt. "Don't," he said finally, voice low. "Please don't do this again." "But you're so tired every day," I insisted, stubborn in the only way I knew, softly. "I should contribute." "I'm not tired," he cut in immediately, like he was trying to convince me and himself at the same time. "You being okay is enough." Then he cleaned the kitchen. Every mess. Every sticky spot. Every smoky smell. Like the disaster was nothing compared to the idea of losing me to it. Afterward, he made noodles again, still clear broth, still simple, except this time he added a mountain of greens and 2 eggs. "Eat," he said, sitting it in front of me with a look that said this was an order. I nodded. "Okay." And for once, my okay wasn't attachment. It was obedience. After that, I truly stayed away from the stove. Because I had learned my limits in a very dramatic, smoky way. And Adrian, somehow, started bringing back better and better things. Convenience store bentos became takeout from real restaurants. Cheap cake became slices from fancy dessert shops with names printed in elegant font. Sometimes there was fruit. Sometimes imported chocolates. Sometimes little snacks I didn't even know existed. I watched him come home exhausted, hands scraped, a bruise on his forearm like he'd knocked into something or slipped off a curb, and I couldn't stop the question from rising up. Can delivering food really pay this much? I asked one night, trying to sound casual. He smiled like it was no big deal. Don't worry. It's fine. He always said it was fine. And I always nodded. But the guilt in me kept growing. So I remembered something. There were things I'd left at my parents' house. Things that were mine, even if my family liked to pretend I didn't belong to myself. My grandmother had left me jewelry. Old pieces. Valuable pieces. If I could sell them, Adrian wouldn't have to work himself raw just to buy me cake. So I called my mother. I want to come pick up some of my things, I said. There was a pause on the other end. A pause that felt like she was weighing whether my ownership mattered. What things? She asked carefully. My things, I repeated. Another pause. Then, reluctant, fine. Come by. When I arrived, the house looked exactly the same, big, polished, familiar in the way a museum is familiar. Beautiful, but not warm. Mom opened the door and stared at me like she hadn't expected me to look. Thinner. Why are you so skinny? She blurted. Is Adrian mistreating you? No, I said calmly. He treats me well. Mom frowned, like my answer didn't fit the story she wanted to tell herself. If he treats you well, why do you look like this? I told you that kind of man can't be relied on. Mom, I interrupted, still calm, I'm just here to get my things. I went upstairs. My old room was gone. Not literally, but it had been turned into storage. Boxes stacked to the ceiling, old clothes, random furniture, a treadmill no one used. Like my existence had been cleared out and replaced by clutter the moment I left. I found the small wooden box buried deep in a closet, the way people bury guilt. I held the clothes and went downstairs. That's when Bella's voice floated from the living room. Mom, is that Jane? I walked in and saw her perched on the sofa with a coffee cup like she'd been born in it. She looked flawless. Hair styled. Makeup perfect. A designer outfit that probably cost more than my monthly salary ever had. She looked me up and down. Oh, she said, lips curling. You came back. Then, with the same sweet sharp tone she'd always used on me, why are you dressed like that? Adrian can't even buy you decent clothes? I glanced at myself, plain t-shirt, jeans, sneakers. Practical. Clean. Real. It's enough, I said. She laughed like that was the funniest thing she'd heard all week. Enough. Right. So you're here to beg, then? I'm here for my things, I said, holding up the box. My things, she echoed, putting the coffee down like she was about to perform. Jane, everything you have is because the family raised you. You got married, you left. You think you can just come back and take valuables to patch up your broke husband's life? Mom cleared her throat weakly. Bella. But the scold was too soft to be real. Bella's eyes sharpened. Am I wrong? She's rummaging through the house like a thief. If she's desperate, she should just admit it. You can pour money into a sinking ship forever. I looked at her and felt something I didn't usually feel. Not anger. Just fatigue. These were my grandmother's, I said. They're not the family's. They're mine. Bella's face tightened. Grandma's things are family things. You don't get to take them. This time Mom spoke more firmly, like she realized the neighbors might hear. Enough. Then she turned to me, her expression shifting into something that resembled concern. Jane, she said, are you really short on money? I nodded. Yes. Mom sighed, stood, and disappeared into a room. When she came back, she held an envelope. There's 50,000 here, she said. Take it. But leave the jewelry. Those are heirlooms. Bella stomped her foot like a child. Mom. Why are you giving her money? She married that kind of man, whatever you give her will disappear into a hole. I stared at the envelope. Then I shook my head. I don't want your money, I said softly. I'm taking my things. And I walked toward the door. Jane. Bella's voice turned sharp, ugly. Stop. If you take those, don't ever come back. You won't be allowed to step into this house again. I stopped. Turned. Looked at her. Looked at my mother standing behind her, eyes uneasy, mouth tight. And I felt calm. The real kind. The kind that comes when a decision is already made. Okay, I said. Bella froze, because she'd expected pleading. I didn't plead. I walked out. Behind me, Bella's voice rose in outrage, but I didn't turn back. When I got home, Adrian wasn't there yet. I opened the wooden box at the table like I was opening a secret. Inside were pieces that had been worn by someone who loved me: jade, pearls, gold. Old, beautiful, heavy with history. I searched online, comparing similar pieces, reading auction listings, trying to translate value into survival. The number that formed in my head made me sit back. It wasn't pocket change. It was enough to change things. When Adrian came home, I placed the box in front of him. These were my grandmother's, I said. Sell them. Use the money to start something. Anything. It has to be better than delivering food until you collapse. He stared at the jewelry for a long time. So long the silence started to feel like a wall. Then he looked up at me, eyes dark and complicated. These, he said carefully. You're sure you want to give them to me? I blinked, confused. If I don't give them to you, who would I give them to? We were married. We were supposed to be a unit. If he did well, I did well. That was the whole point, wasn't it? His jaw tightened like he was swallowing something. And then he did something he hadn't done since we got married. He pulled me into his arms. It was the first real embrace between us, warm, steady, smelling faintly like the outside world, like rain and streetlights and effort. His voice brushed my ear. Jane, he whispered, and my name sounded different in his mouth. Why are you so good to me? Because you're good to me, I wanted to say. Because you come home exhausted and still remember cake. Because you looked at my trembling hands in a smoky kitchen and cared more about whether I was burned than whether I destroyed a pan. So I said the simplest truth. Because you're good to me too. He let out a quiet sound, almost disbelieving. Just because I bought you cake? I tilted my head, genuinely puzzled. What else would it be? We help each other. That's what spouses do. He didn't answer. He just held me tighter, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he loosened his grip. The next day, he took the jewelry. And I told myself not to feel sentimental. It was just objects. We needed to survive. It was practical. That night he came home with bags. More food than usual. Better food. And not just food, new household items, a few things I'd mentioned in passing, and then, folded carefully in a garment bag, a dress. A beautiful dress. The kind of dress that didn't belong in our small apartment. Where did you get all this? I asked slowly, looking from the dress to his face. He said it simply. I sold the jewelry. My brows pulled together. Adrian, you can't spend like this. You should use that money for something real. A business. An investment. Something that lasts. He shook his head and touched the garment bag lightly. This isn't just a dress, he said. It's for an event. I need you to come with me. I stared at him. An event. The word felt fancy. Dangerous. Like stepping into a world that could look at me and decide I didn't belong. But I looked at Adrian and saw the same careful dignity he carried into our tiny wedding. The same straightened tie. The same refusal to let life crush him completely. So I nodded. Okay. The event was at the nicest hotel downtown, the kind with a chandelier that looks like it could fall and take out a small nation. I wore the dress Adrian bought, and for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not by the crowd. By him. He offered his arm, and I took it. The moment we stepped inside, I heard it, the whispers. A hiss of judgment sliding over marble floors. Isn't that the older Lynn daughter? I heard she married the Sterling heir after he went bankrupt. Poor thing. They're probably here trying to meet someone. Desperate, you know? I kept my face smooth. People had been talking about me my whole life. It was almost comforting, In a twisted way. Familiar background noise. Then I saw them. Bella and Liam, surrounded by people who looked like money. Bella wore a custom gown that hugged her like it was tailored by envy itself. Her jewelry sparkled. She looked exactly like someone who believed life owed her a crown. Bella spotted me, and surprise flickered across her face, quickly replaced by amusement. She walked over, Liam trailing behind her with a stiff expression, like he already sensed what was coming. "Well," Bella said, smiling too brightly. "Look who made it into a place like this." Her gaze cut over my dress. "Did you rent that?" I didn't answer. Bella leaned in as if sharing gossip. "You know tonight the new richest man in the city is supposed to show up. Like. Big reveal. People are dying to meet him." Her eyes slid to Adrian with open contempt. "Just don't embarrass yourselves. This isn't a place for charity cases." Adrian's expression didn't change. "We were invited," he said, voice calm. Bella snorted. "Invited? Who would invite you?" She didn't get to finish. A middle-aged man in a tailored suit hurried over, moving fast, like he was afraid of being late to his own future. "Mr. Sterling," he said, and his voice was almost eager. He held out his hand with both of his. "You're finally here. We've been waiting. I've been hoping to talk partnerships with you." The air shifted. The whispers stopped like someone cut the sound. Bella's smile froze. People turned. Heads angled. Eyes sharpened. The man kept talking, animated, respectful, like Adrian was gravity and everyone else was dust. "I told them you'd come. I told them Sterling Group's turnaround was the most impressive thing I've seen in years." More people moved in. "Mr. Sterling." "Sir, it's an honor. I'd love to discuss collaboration. May I introduce myself?" And then I heard it, low and stunned, from somewhere behind us. "That's him. That's the new richest man." My fingers tightened on Adrian's arm without me meaning to. I turned my head slowly and looked at him. At the man who came home smelling like rain and exhaustion. At the man who carried my suitcases up 6 flights and apologized like it was his fault the world was unfair. At the man who bought me $5 cake. Adrian's face was calm, composed, almost familiar in a different way. Like he had stepped back into a suit that actually fit. Bella's face drained of color. She stared at me like I'd done sorcery. "You knew," she said, voice shaking. "You knew and you lied. You lied to all of us." I blinked. "I didn't know." "You're lying," Bella snapped, too loud. Too desperate. People were already watching again, hungry for the next scene. "You had to know. Otherwise, why would you marry him so easily?" "Because I didn't get a choice," I thought. "Because you chose for me." But I didn't say it. Bella took a step forward, eyes bright with panic and greed. You tricked me. You pretended to be all calm and noble so you could steal him." Her voice rose higher, cracking. Then, in the middle of a ballroom full of people who could ruin reputations with a glance, Bella said the most unbelievable thing I'd ever heard her say out loud. "Fine," she blurted. "Jane, give him to me. I'm the one who should be Mrs. Sterling. I'm more suitable. I'm prettier. I'm better at this." The room went silent again. Not polite silence. Predator silence. I stood there, calm as ever, and honestly thought, if it makes her stop screaming, why not? Marriage is marriage. People are people. If. I barely had time to form the thought. Adrian stepped forward and covered my mouth with his hand, gentle but firm, exactly like the moment he described later. "That's not happening," he said. I tried to speak through his fingers, startled by my own instinct to agree. "It could happen, Adrian. It really, really can't." Then he lowered his hand, kept his arm around my waist, and looked at Bella with eyes that had turned cold. "Miss Lynn," he said, voice flat, "Jane is my wife. We are married. Your suggestion is inappropriate." I reject it. Bella's face twisted. "Why? What does she have that I don't?" Adrian didn't even glance at me like I was a comparison chart. He said it simply, like it was the only truth that mattered. "Because I chose her." Then he turned his eyes, just slightly, to Liam. There was something sharp in Adrian's expression, polite on the surface, warning underneath. "Mr. Cole," Adrian said, almost casually, "your wife seems very interested in me. Are you comfortable with that?" Liam's face darkened. Bella sputtered, "I'm not." But it was too late. Too many people had heard. Too many eyes were on them now, not me. Liam's grip closed on Bella's wrist. "Enough," he said, voice tight with humiliation. Bella tried to pull away. "Liam, listen." He didn't. He just dragged her back into their circle, his jaw clenched like he was biting down on rage. As they left, Bella turned her head and looked at me with pure hatred. I didn't react. I never did. But this time, the whispers following her weren't about me. They were about her. That shameless. In public? Asking to trade husbands? Poor Mr. Cole. And Mrs. Sterling looks so gentle. So calm. The contrast is brutal. Adrian's hand found mine. "Let's go," he murmured. "Aren't you here for business?" I asked, still trying to understand what I was standing inside of. He gave the smallest smile. "It's already done. The rest can be handled by my team." We left the ballroom. Outside, a black luxury car waited. I stared at it, then at him. "This is yours?" He nodded like it was obvious. "It's been at the office. I had it brought today." Something inside me clicked, quietly, like a lock turning. I looked at Adrian's face in the dim light and asked the question that had been circling me like a bird all night. "You were never really bankrupt, were you?" He didn't answer immediately. Then he nodded. "I'm sorry," he said. "I lied." "Why?" I asked, and my voice still didn't shake. "I needed to," he said simply. "To make competitors careless. To reset the board." I stared at him. Then I realized what else was hidden inside that confession. "Then why marry me?" I asked softly. Adrian's gaze warmed. The marriage arrangement was real, he admitted. But I expected the Lynn family to back out. I expected to be rejected. He paused, then looked at me like he was seeing something precious he didn't know he'd be given. "I didn't expect you to choose me." I almost laughed. Choose. It wasn't choosing. It was being chosen for. But somehow, the outcome had landed like a miracle. "You did lie to me," I said, because it was true. He nodded again, seriousness in his eyes. "I did. And I'm sorry. I promise I won't lie to you again." I thought about the nights he came home exhausted. The little cakes. The way he'd protected me in that kitchen. The way he held me like I mattered. And I realized something a little embarrassing. My biggest emotion wasn't anger. It was relief. Relief that he hadn't actually needed to suffer like that. So I said, honestly, "Fine." His brows lifted slightly. I added, "Because I couldn't help myself, I just felt bad that you were working so hard delivering food." For half a second, Adrian looked stunned. Then he laughed, real laughter, warm and surprised. "That's what you're upset about?" he asked. I nodded. "You were out there in the wind and rain and still buying me cake." His expression softened so much it almost hurt to look at. He took my hand and pressed a kiss to my knuckles, gentle, steady, like a vow. "You," he murmured, almost to himself. "You really are." I knew what he meant. And for once, I didn't mind being the calm one. Because now, my calm wasn't empty. It was anchored. The next day, my mother called. Her voice was sharp, urgent. "Jane. Come home. Now." So I went. My parents sat in the living room like a tribunal. Bella sat beside Mom with red eyes and trembling shoulders, like she'd been wronged by the universe itself. Dad leaned forward, his face tight with anger. "Jane," he said, voice heavy, "how could you do this?" I blinked. "Do what?" Mom slammed her palm on the table. "Don't act innocent. You knew Adrian Sterling was the richest man in the city. You pretended not to know so Bella would marry Liam instead. You tricked us. You bullied your sister. I looked at Bella. She kept her head down, sniffing softly, perfectly performed. I felt tired again. I didn't know, I said plainly. I thought he really was bankrupt. Bella snapped her head up, eyes blazing. Liar. If you didn't know, why would you agree so fast? You've always been calculating. You just pretend to be calm so people underestimate you. Dad slapped the table harder. Exactly. Bella is right. You've never been as simple as your sister. Their words should have hurt. Maybe they would have, years ago. Now they just sounded like proof that they'd never bothered to see me at all. I exhaled softly. What do you want me to do? Bella didn't hesitate. Give him to me, she said, eyes wild. You don't deserve to be Mrs. Sterling. I do. Mom's face hardened. If you don't divorce Adrian, we'll cut you off. You will no longer be our daughter. I stared at them. And felt calm. Again. I nodded. Okay. The room froze. Dad blinked like he didn't understand the script anymore. Mom's mouth opened. What? I'll tell him you want a divorce, I said evenly. But whether we actually divorce is his choice. Not yours. Then I looked at them, my parents, my sister, and said the part that felt even easier. And from today on, I have nothing to do with this family. Mom's face went pale. Jane, how can you be so heartless? I tilted my head slightly, genuinely puzzled. I'm doing what you asked, I said. You asked me to give my husband to Bella and break ties with you. I'm agreeing. Why are you mad? Dad stood up so fast the water in his glass trembled. You think you can just cut us off? Who do you think you are? I didn't answer. There was nothing to argue. I walked out. Behind me, Bella's voice rang out, furious and triumphant at the same time. See? She climbed up and now she's abandoning us. I told you she was selfish. Mom called my name, softer now, like she'd suddenly realized the threat had gone too far. But I was already outside. I didn't go back to the small apartment. Instead, I went to a cafe near Sterling Group's office, sat by the window, and texted Adrian. 10 minutes later, he walked in. He looked expensive again, in a way that had nothing to do with clothes and everything to do with presence. But when his eyes found me, the softness was the same. What's wrong? He asked immediately, sitting down across from me. Your face. I told him the truth, plain and unembellished, the way I always did. I just came from my parents' house. They want me to divorce you. They want me to give you to Bella. Adrian's expression darkened instantly. What did you say? He asked, voice tight. I agreed, I said, because lying felt pointless. And I agreed to cut ties with them. But whether we actually divorce, that's your choice. For a split second, he stared at me like he wasn't sure he heard correctly. Then something in his eyes shifted, amusement, disbelief, tenderness, all at once. He laughed under his breath. Jane, he said, leaning in slightly, I don't agree to a divorce. But. No, he cut me off gently, firmly. No, but. You're my wife. You will stay my wife. It should have felt dramatic. It didn't. It felt safe. That night, my parents showed up. Not at the old apartment. At Adrian's real home. A standalone mansion with gates and lights and a driveway that looked like it belonged to a movie. I stood behind Adrian as he opened the door. My mother's face changed the moment she saw the place, her anger rearranging itself into something softer, something calculating. Jane, she said quickly. We should talk. Calmly. Dad stepped forward, eyes hard. Adrian doesn't belong to you. You used disgusting tactics to steal the man meant for your sister. Adrian's gaze turned cold. Mr. and Mrs. Lynn, he said, voice flat, you are not welcome here. Dad started to argue, but Adrian didn't let him build momentum. Jane has cut ties with you, Adrian continued, calm as ice. You will not come here and harass my wife. My mother's eyes widened. Cut ties? Jane, what are you saying? I stepped forward, still behind Adrian's shoulder, and looked at them. I did what you demanded, I said. You wanted me to give my husband to Bella. You threatened to cut me off. I agreed. Why are you acting shocked? Mom looked like she'd been slapped. Dad looked like he wanted to roar. Adrian didn't give them a chance. He called security. A moment later, guards arrived, polite, firm, unmovable. My mother tried to push forward, voice rising. Jane. You can't do this to us. But the gate was already closing. The door shut. The sound was final. Adrian turned to me and pulled me into his arms, like he was drawing a line the world couldn't cross. I'm sorry, he murmured into my hair. I shouldn't have let them hurt you. They didn't, I said honestly. Or maybe they had. Just not in the way they thought. I'm used to it, I added, because that was also true. Adrian's arms tightened. You won't have to be used to it anymore, he said softly. I'll protect you. And for the first time, I believed someone when they said that. A few days later, I heard Bella and Liam divorced. Apparently, after the gala, Bella hadn't stopped. She tried to contact Adrian again and again, as if my marriage was a prize she could still win if she screamed loudly enough. Liam, humiliated and furious, finally gave up on pretending. Not long after, he remarried, quietly, to a woman people described as gentle and warm, the kind of words Bella used to mock. Bella stayed in my parents' house. But now, when people spoke her name, it wasn't with admiration. It was with that particular kind of pity that tastes like consequence. Sometimes I thought about her. Not with hate. Just like you think about an old bruise when the weather changes. What I missed more, strangely, was the old apartment. After Adrian told me everything, we moved into the mansion, because of course we did. There were staff. A garden. A pool. Rooms I didn't know what to do with. It was beautiful. And I hated how unfamiliar it felt. One weekend, I said it out loud while we stood in a hallway that could fit my old bedroom twice over. I miss the little place, I admitted. It felt warmer. Adrian smiled like he'd been waiting for me to say it. Then we'll go back on weekends, he said easily. We'll stay there sometimes. Really? Really, he said. That's where our best memories are. I thought of him climbing 6 flights with my suitcases. Of him coming home exhausted and still remembering cake. Of him sleeping on the sofa like he didn't deserve space. And I laughed softly. You acted so believable, I said. I really thought you were delivering food to support us. Adrian's expression didn't change. I did deliver, he said. I blinked. What? He shrugged, like it was the simplest thing. My assistant took the orders and handled the logistics. But I rode the routes myself. Why? I asked, stunned. Adrian looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, quietly, because if I failed, I wanted to know I could still support you. Even if everything fell apart. Something rose in my chest, thick and unfamiliar. Not anger. Not sadness. Something deeper. Something like being chosen. Adrian, I whispered, and my voice wobbled just slightly, you're really good to me. He leaned in and kissed my forehead. I'll be even better, he said. For the rest of your life. Then he looked at me, eyes warm, smile soft. Jane, he murmured, almost shy in a way that didn't match the mansion around us, let's have a baby. I blinked, thinking. A baby. A new life. A new beginning. And the most natural answer in the world rose to my lips. Okay, I said. Adrian laughed, delighted. You, he said, brushing his thumb over my cheek, you think everything is okay. Is it not? I asked, genuinely. He shook his head and smiled like he'd found something rare. It is, he said softly. It's all okay. As long as it's with you. And that made me think of the way I'd always lived, marrying whoever, accepting whatever, floating through life like nothing mattered. Back then, I told myself it didn't matter who I married. Anyone would do. But now I knew the truth. It wasn't anyone. It was him. Only him.